Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 56. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation, as the Pittsburgh Steelers had the weekend off to lick their wounds following that Thursday night loss to the Cleveland Browns. And I'd say they could watch some AFC North football, but there was no AFC North football this weekend. The Bengals had a bye week, and the Ravens played tonight to finish up the week against the LA Chargers. Should be a big game there. We did get to watch a preview of the, week 15 game against the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, and I am not looking forward to watching this defense have to stop Saquon Barkley, Dave.
We're on to Cincinnati.
The old Belichick.
Yeah, the old Belichick line. Yeah, I got a chance to sit a lazy boy, and even though that game's several weeks off still, got to watch that Eagles game last night against the Rams, and Lord have mercy, they were able to run the football, and it was a Saquon Barkley show for the most part, and he did not disappoint there. Didn't realize they had moved Mekhi Becton into guard, and he seems to be fitting there. Their offensive line, man, just wore them down. And then, two huge runs. And what do we talk about? Not only explosive runs by running backs, but double explosive, triple explosive. And I guess in his case, really almost triple, at least one was triple explosive, I think. And then ending up in the end zone. Obviously, the last one was a huge dagger that really wasn't needed there. But when you look at what they're doing on the offensive side of football, and they didn't even have one of their very talented young wide receivers for that game on top of it, missed the game. So, and then defensive side of football, the amount of pressure and all. Now they did lose Brandon Graham, I think, to an injury there, but the way they kind of widen out those ends and able to get pressure and all, and were able to do that. The Rams had no answer for that throughout the game as well too. So earlier in the season, I think at one point I said, when we were looking at the schedule, who exactly are the Philadelphia Eagles? We'll find out. Well, right now they're obviously on a huge run of stacking wins, and I think next up the Eagles have the Baltimore Ravens, so that'll be an interesting game to watch. But you have to put an exclamation point next to that game, along with several other ones for the Steelers on the final 6 games of the season. The first of which, obviously, against the Bengals. You go Bengals, Browns, and I guess that rounds out the AFC North, the first trip through there, and then
the Eagles game, right?
Yeah, then you get the Eagles, and then the Chiefs in there. So this is setting up for an end. And look, the game against the Bengals coming up this week for the Steelers. I mean, this is a super important game for the Bengals. If they're going to get back in this thing, they need to win that game and then rattle off several more, and obviously have the second one against the Steelers to close out the season here. So it's shaping up to be a tough run for the Steelers here in these final 6 games. And you would think that the Steelers have to win at least 2 to guarantee themselves a playoff spot. And I know a lot has been being written and said about, find me 2 games on the schedule that Steelers can win. I mean, I think they're there. There's some winnable ones. Obviously, got a rematch against the Browns in a couple of weeks. That's one that you better capture right there. But this just goes back to when the schedule was set originally there. We said the Steelers need to make hay in the first half of this thing because the second half of the schedule was tough, and it is. And they dropped one that they probably should have had against the Browns on Thursday night.
It'll be telling, though, because, yes, you wanted to build up that early season advantage and that buffer, which Pittsburgh, to their credit, did. But if you want to be the Super Bowl contender that they were speculated as prior to the Browns game. AFC North contender, can make a run at this thing, win a playoff game, win multiple. You can't just beat up on the poor Jets and Giants and Raiders. You got to beat some really quality teams, and Pittsburgh will have nothing but quality teams on their schedule the rest of the way. Yeah, after the AFC North first matchup, first run through, as you said, you go Philadelphia, Baltimore again, Kansas City, and then the Bengals to close out the season, and a couple of short weeks in there. A Saturday game against Baltimore, a Wednesday game, the Christmas Day game on Netflix against the Chiefs. Short weeks for both, so obviously it works both ways. Pittsburgh will be the home game for the Chiefs game, and then on the road at Baltimore on that Saturday the week prior. So going to learn a lot about this Steelers team. Do you have any? Has this Browns loss shaken your thoughts about what you thought about Pittsburgh prior to the Browns game?
I mean, when going back through the game over the weekend again, I was disappointed. I thought for the most part the defense obviously did okay on early downs. I mean, but especially in the first 3 quarters of the game. I mean, we went over this the other day. The Browns really struggled on third downs. The Steelers were getting off the field, but on the ones that the Browns didn't go for the fourth downs, but giving up those fourth down plays ended up being huge aspect of this game, and that just goes to show you because the small box score on like even the league's site, NFL GIS only shows the third down stats. If you look at that, you think, how the hell did the Browns win going 1-10? But it doesn't show unless you go to other pages and all, the fourth down stats, and those fourth down conversions that the Browns had were really key in this thing overall. And you look back at just at towards the end of the game kind of segment there, not being able to get off the field, especially in that final drive, and at least holding them to a field goal to leave some time on the clock. It was very disappointing there. And then you look back at me, you got a couple of three and outs early in this game, and then man, it's almost like you feel like you're missing chunks of the all-22 on a defensive side of football because you keep going through some of these plays early on. It's already second quarter, and I think the Browns had only had 2 possessions at that point, 2 3-and-outs, and then you look like they're going the other direction in the second quarter, and that's when they were able to. That's when really Jerry Jeudy came alive a little bit there. I thought that on extended play situations for Jameis Winston, he won those, most of them. They had a couple of nice plays from extended plays in that. And yeah, I think it's a bit worrisome too that the 4-man pass rush for the most part, the T.J. Watt just did not have a good game at all. In fact, one of his worst ones in quite a while, I think, for him. So, I mean, I'm not concerned about that. I think he'll rebound. I think it was just an inopportune time against an opponent that you kind of thought he would have had a better game against there. But for the most part, the defense, I thought did well, except for key moments in the game. And it goes back to kind of the phrase that we use, other than that, how did you enjoy the play? I mean, you got right. This ends up being 4 downs in situations there, not just 3. And the Browns won 4th down. And then they won extended play situations, like I said, with Jameis Winston. Even though Chubb didn't have a huge game, like we talked about the other day, he was successful on short yardage type situations. That was key in this game as well, too. And then just end of game situations. You got an interception out of Jameis, and you're thinking at that point, especially defensive side of football. Okay, well, the Steelers didn't do anything, but, I had the bad punt, and then they couldn't get off that field that one last time. And then, that essentially lost the game for them. So there was good, bad, and ugly all over this thing, especially on the defensive side of football. And, you rely on this defense to win you games, and this was a game that it felt like the defense had to win late, especially after the team fighting back and getting lead, and they couldn't do it. So, you go on a road on a short week, AFC North ball, yada, 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 but the defense just didn't get it done overall.
Yeah, to answer my own question, my thoughts of this team really haven't changed coming off the Browns loss because I knew the difficulty that was, at hand. Still disappointed in the loss, and Pittsburgh still should have won that game when they're kicking themselves, and they need to because of that. But because it was that short week off the Ravens game on the road, just given everything that was kind of going on against, I think, a better than people give credit for, or at least a more talented than people give credit for Browns team that was moving the ball better, more cohesive with Winston at quarterback as opposed to Watson. I never was really totally buying into Pittsburgh Super Bowl contender, although I generally stay away from that stuff until the very end of the regular season and start of the playoffs when you have the whole totality of the season and health of the team and who's hot and who's not to really assess those types of things. I think week 11, week 12, pretty premature to do that overall, but I still think it's a team that will make the playoffs and is capable of winning at least one playoff game. I think my concern that's been raised slightly, it's not DEFCON. What's the top DEFCON? Is it 1, 5? I always forget how they do their system. But anyway, what the alarm bell that's starting to ring in the background in my head is, despite all the focus on the offense and their struggles, and there's some issues there, obviously, as you said, can the defense get big stops late? And there's been a bit of an issue of that throughout the season. The Dallas game, losing that on a last drive there from the Cowboys, a fourth down that they hit for the game-winning touchdown. Even the Ravens game, while Pittsburgh did get a 2-point conversion stop, Baltimore still drove down the field, put the ball in the end zone to make it a one-play kind of a thing. Did the defense really get like a ton of great late stops against Washington? I don't know if that was really the case or not. And then, of course, the Browns game, allowing that last possession, although the field position was terrible because of the Waitman shank punt. And then the wins over the Jets and the Raiders and the Giants didn't come down to the defense having to make those last stands. So you do wonder, this defense, which is supposed to still be the strength of this team, is not gotten those late stops.
Yeah. And look, once again, the Browns only ran like 55 plays, and they tried to play into your hands a couple of times with some penalties throughout this game on top of it there. And, once again, you get into key situations in this game. I thought they did a good job on third down, but, in the fourth down situations, what were the Browns? What, four for four, right? Those are key, those were key plays throughout this game here, and it diminishes what you did on third down if you turn around and give it to them on fourth down. And the four-man, it seemed like most of the pressure they were getting on Jameis Winston is when they sent like Roberts or Queen or something like that. And I still think Herbert played a pretty good game overall, but they still weren't. He got the strip sack and all, and that was key. I mean, look, you take the football away. Statistically, when you look back at this game, other than the fourth down, if you didn't get shown the fourth down percentages in this game, you think, man, there's no way the Steelers lost this game because they had the 3 takeaways and all. They kept them on 1 of 10 on third down.
Even with the fourth down stat, you wonder at the box score how you lose this game. The Browns' run game wasn't successful. The other stats,
it was successful in key moments for them, and then also the extended plays too is something. I think I mentioned this during the pregame run as well too about Jameis Winston is one of the things that kind of stuck out in the previous 3-4 games that he did is, man, he's not really. To me, I don't think about Jameis Winston's build up throughout his career as being a huge extend to play kind of guy. But one thing that did stick out in some of the big plays that they did have, even a couple against the Saints as well too, in a game that they lost, was his ability to extend to play and then make plays happen. And he had a couple in this game, and then obviously one with his feet as well too that ended up him scampering for a touchdown. That was a huge play in this game as well too. So. Once again, you can boil these things down to 4 or 5 plays in a game that make a difference in these close ball games, and it feels like the Browns won. Had all those big plays in this game, and that was the turning point that ended up in the loss. Now, look, the Steelers did their part. This was a team loss in all 3 phases, and you do wonder, man, if Corliss Waitman just gets off like a 40 42-yard punt, how much more of a difference, would that have made in the game? Who knows at this point? But it was a team loss, but the defense had their hands in it, especially late game situations. And as you mentioned, that is concerning when you roll back to a couple of these either wins or losses that they've had in a few of these games.
Right. Even though the overall output of the Cowboys game, the Ravens game, even the Browns game are generally good, holding Dallas to 20, holding Baltimore to 16, holding the Browns to 24. The situation of football late, the final couple minutes, you want to see the defense really be able to rise to the occasion. They did do that early in the year against Atlanta and Denver, and they played great defensive performances overall, not taking anything away from those outings. But some of those were really, really late stuff where I think Atlanta had like 40 seconds left, and Denver had a similar situation there, really minimal opportunities to truly uh, have a game winning drive for their offenses. So I'm not trying to say this is a bad defense or overrated, but I want this defense to show they can make that weighty stop late in the game as they have been throughout the early portions of the game where they have gotten continued stops and played some really good defense.
Yep.
So does your thought though about your feeling about this team, has it changed since the Browns lost with everything that you laid out, or do you still feel the same about the team in terms of their postseason chances and just the overall contention of this team as you did prior to Thursday night?
I'm worried about this team overall, especially going on into this 6-game stint against a couple of these teams. But I still feel that this is a team that will, obviously make the playoffs, and I think they're good enough, depending on the matchup, to win one game. The defense is not as good as I thought they should be at this time of year, and I do realize they don't have Highsmith right now. But I mean, for the most part, they have overcome injuries, especially on that side of the football. Okay. I mean, you got the depth at outside linebacker. You went out and traded for Preston Smith. I think that gives you good depth there. I like some of the rotations they've been able to use up front. I think even you wrote about, they finally getting the rotation of Cam Hayward right, and amount of snaps for him is just kind of the key moment aspect of this thing. And they did take the football away 3 times, but when it comes to crunch time, being as how we know that this team for years now has a propensity to be in one possession games late, you do wonder late in games against teams better than the Browns are, if they're going to be able to hold up and get that key stop when they need it the most. So the offense is kind of, my thoughts on the offense has kind of been the same for several weeks now. We've talked about the whole red zone thing. They are able to move the ball offensively down the field. They just are not scoring the football enough with regularity. And if they're going to win a few of these games moving forward and beat teams like the Eagles and the Chiefs and potentially even the Bengals this upcoming week here, it feels like you're going to have to score a few more points than they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see if they work that out. I mean, I do like the way they're moving the football at times, but just settling for 3 points, you once again, you might be able to get away with that once in the playoffs here. But to make a good run at this, I don't think that you can totally rely on the defense of just allowing 16 points and you winning the ball game 19-16 type thing. So I am worried a little bit about the defense, and it will be interesting to see when they do get Highsmith back from the ankle injury, or what is it with him? Yeah, ankle injury with him, to see if they can straighten this thing out. I thought the 4-man pass rush would be a little bit better. I kind of wonder if they have to be a little bit more creative to start doing some 5-man rushes, a little bit more blitz moving forward, into this thing. So, I mean, they are a playoff team. I did not think they would be a playoff team to start the season. I do kind of wonder though, how far they can go.
Yeah, that's fair. And like I said, this next stretch of games, really the rest of the regular season, will tell that story, because there are quality opponents and divisional opponents and road games and short weeks and all of those challenges along the way for Pittsburgh. And they'll start by playing the Bengals 6 days from now, and they're going to get the Bengals' absolute best in this game, Dave, because the Bengals, I know we've said it for the last couple of weeks, but it is truer now than ever. Their season is on the line. This is literally their Super Bowl. They have to essentially win out to have a chance to make the playoffs. And while that's a long shot to win 6 straight, it's doable. Their schedule is Pittsburgh, at Dallas, at Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and then at Pittsburgh in the finale. So with that offense, how potent they can be if they get hot, that is not the craziest thought, despite those odds still being long. But regardless, they know they have to win. They're coming off the bye. They're the home team on Sunday. There are things working in their favor.
Yeah, and I spent 5 minutes the other day at the end of that show saying, even though this is a 4-7 Bengals team right now, you look at the rest of their schedule, Pittsburgh up first, and they get Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and then the Steelers again. If they take care of the Steelers coming up at this game this week, you do have to kind of wonder, might this team rattle off 5 in a row and then get into the final game of the season here, and then that being a game that decides whether or not they get into the playoffs or not. So on the Steelers side of things, if you want to start answering some of the critics back here, you're coming off of a mini bye. You're coming off of a very disappointing divisional loss to the Browns on the road. You know that you knew what your schedule was going to be at this point of the season for quite a while here. It's time for you to make a statement back by not only taking care of the Bengals this week, but then turn around and give it back to the Browns and recapture a couple of these wins real quick. And look, if the Steelers win these next 2 games, and if certain things happen in the AFC, I mean, we could be talking about the Steelers potentially clinching a playoff spot after beating the Browns if they win these next 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you said it well. This is a chance to make a statement, to sit there and say, okay, we had a bad loss to Cleveland, but that happens to every team. Look around this weekend, who had bad losses. Washington lost to Dallas. They're skidding. Houston lost to Tennessee. Again, you can look around.
The Chiefs were close with the Panthers. The Minnesota took overtime for them to beat the Bears. As you mentioned, the Titans took care of the Texans. What else was interesting within there? Yeah, you mentioned the Cowboys beating the Commanders. Any given Sunday, obviously.
Right. Right. So a chance to say, okay, had a bad loss. Baltimore lost to Cleveland earlier this year. They bounced back. Pittsburgh can do the same. That would be a statement win. The Bengals are a much better team than your typical 4-7 squad.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a tough game.
It is. We'll talk about that more throughout the week on Wednesday and Friday's show. Well, Dave, one piece of, wouldn't call it news, but maybe informed speculation that came out, I think Monday morning from The Athletic. This is something to worry about late in the season, more likely in the off season. But Central Michigan, usually don't lead off with Central Michigan discussion, but Jim McElwain, their head coach, is stepping down at the end of the season. And one Athletic beat writer and putting together a list of potential candidates. This is, again, more speculation than it is, here's the actual list. But he said it was in conversation with those kind of in the know inside the industry. Listed Steelers wide receivers coach Zach Azzanni among those potential candidates to replace McElwain as the head coach at Central Michigan. Azzanni played receiver at Central Michigan in the late 90s. He coached there from 2007 to 2009, recruited and, of course, coached Antonio Brown, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so there are some ties that could bring him back there. We'd all would just be guessing, not going to spend a lot of time on this story, and he may not even get an interview. I think the odds of him becoming the head coach are pretty unlikely, given he's only been a wide receivers coach largely throughout his career, never been a coordinator, never been a head coach anywhere. Would be a big leap for him to make, but like him as a coach, I think he's done a good job overall. I think guys have responded to him in Pittsburgh this year. So just want to mention that as one potential name as we just have an eye towards the offseason as we kind of get this little break here with the Thursday night game.
Here's the thing. It would definitely be if he got offered the job, it'd be a heck of a decision on his part. It would mean he's probably going to be in the coaching ranks for a little bit. I mean, in the college coaching ranks for a little bit there. So it would be a decision of, does he feel how much of a future does he have in the NFL for the immediate future? Obviously, he's still young and all. It would be, you hire these position coaches at times, especially, lower down the rung like that, thinking that you're going to have him on staff for a little bit. So, for him to be basically one and done with the Steelers would be, quite interesting.
Yeah, I think if he was offered it, how do you turn that down? Head coaching job at drama mater is, I think you have to say yes to that opportunity, but I just wonder if it'll actually come. So just a side note, nothing to think about too much, but just want to mention that it was kind of the one little piece of, again, I wouldn't call it news, but something little nugget that came out here for this Monday morning without a Steelers game to talk about from over the weekend. All right, Dave, let's get into the all-22 of this Browns game since we've had a lot of time to decompress and go back and comb through the tape. Let's start with the Steelers defense in this one. From my charting, the pressure rate actually was a bit better than what I thought it was live. And you're right. I thought Nick Herbig watching the All-22 had a better game than what I gave him credit for in Friday's show. It was more than just that one sack fumble that he forced in the second half. But overall, the pass rush still was lacking across the board. And TJ Watt, as you said, I thought he was going to be chipped a ton in this game, and he was still given plenty of attention in key moments. But I charted 13 one-on-one reps with right tackle Jack Conklin, and I had Watt losing at least 12 of them. Potentially, you could argue even all 13. So for Watt, one of the quietest games he's had in maybe his entire career.
Yeah, look, he still made a couple plays against the run. But as far as a pass rusher goes, he was very, very, very quiet in this one. And like I said, and good that the tape showed it on your end as well too. I thought Herbig played well overall, but everybody else, unless they were sending Queen or Roberts up the middle and all like that, it felt pretty quiet overall. Then once again, I can't help but go back in the instances that Jameis Winston, it felt like they were really, the way they were kind of umbrellaing him a little bit. It felt like they were trying to contain him in the pocket with the pass rush, but much in the same manner they did in the previous couple of games here. But in the instances that Winston did escape the pass rush, I thought he made some key play. One throwing back towards the middle of the field. One was even, I think, dropped on extended play on his aspect. I just thought overall, Jameis Winston, in the few times that he was escaped the pocket, he won most of those battles overall, and they, that ended up being a key aspect of it there. I thought Jerry Jeudy won a lot of the battles against Joey Porter, especially late in the game on, I think, what was that, the fourth quarter when they kind of rubbed him off. Was that their only third down they had converted deep that out to Jeudy on the left hand side? I'm losing track of the plays there, but
was that a fourth down or a third down?
I can't remember if it was a third or fourth down.
I say it was a fourth down.
Okay.
But I may be wrong about that.
It might have been, but overall they just, and then you didn't sack them, or you had the one strip sack fumble. They obviously had the Winston gave him one late in the game, and at that point you're thinking it was over there. But the pass rush just generally as a whole didn't do a good job. And then instances when once again they forced him out of the pocket, he made the extended plays there. So yeah, from a pressure standpoint, it certainly wasn't consistent.
Not that I'm looking to make excuses for this team. How much did the snow, though, play a factor? And yes, you could sit there and say, well, Cleveland had 4 sacks, but all 4 came in the first half. They didn't have a sack in the second half, despite Pittsburgh at times, a large chunk of the game having to play from behind and having to throw. And the pressure wasn't as immediate as it was in the first half before that game turned into a snow globe. So did the snow, and I know they were changing cleats at one point, could you use that as any explanation for why the pass rush was lackluster?
I don't know. This team should be should be used to playing in inclement weather. If not, they better get used to it here coming up. During this stretch of games to close out the season here. I mean, we've seen this team be able to pass rush better in the snow before.
When was their last snow game like this, to this degree of like true, almost blizzard like conditions where you had an inch or two of snow? I truthfully could not remember. I know there have been games, the Bills game from a while back, it was a Bengals game. They played in some super, cold and like winter, Raiders game 2 years ago. That was a super cold game. I don't know the last time they played in a true snow game like this.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. We said this going into the game. That interior portion of the Browns offensive line is good, but they, I thought going into this game because of Jermaine I Fanny starting at left tackle, I thought Herbig would have a good game against him, and he did overall. The big letdown and where you missed it the most is Watt making a couple of those key plays in games. So I think really that might have been the difference in this thing when it comes to the pass rush. Not so much the snow. Is just the Watt was stymied all game, and normally he's good for 1, 2, 3 key plays, whether it be a bat down, whether it be strip sack, whether it be a sack. Along those lines, you didn't get those 3 or 4 key plays out of him in this game. And had you done so, especially late in the game, that would have been a deciding factor in this thing.
Right. As you said, late in the game, especially because that's whenever he's just so good with that clutch factor. And so, yeah, it was a bad game. And I'm not saying the snow was the reason the pass rush in the first half was not particularly strong when the snow was not, either existent or a factor. So that's not the excuse overall. You just wonder on that, some of the late drive stuff, how much does that play a factor in getting traction and improving your get off, which is what, guys like Watt and Herbig really try to maximize. But yeah, bad game for Watt, but it is just one game. I'm not concerned about him longer term. Little kind of reset on this mini bye week, chance to get back at it on Sunday, and that'll be against a rookie, right? Amarius Mims at right tackle. So that'll be a big time matchup for TJ Watt to show that he's still TJ Watt.
Is he back from his injury? I haven't even looked that far ahead with Mims.
I thought, I could be wrong. I just know he's been starting because they had an injury at right tackle earlier in the year. I thought that Mims, I remember seeing him recently on my TV screen.
Okay.
Let's check here. He played against the Chargers on November 17th.
Okay, then they had the bye.
Yeah. So he should be good for that game.
Well, I mean, look, if anybody's going to be, under the microscope this week, it's obviously going to be TJ Watt. So, and they certainly need an impact. And he's had impactful games against the Bengals, obviously, in the past and all. So, not like I doubt that he won't answer the bell, but if he does answer the bell, it'll be a huge aspect of this game because the Bengals, at least on the offensive side of the football, have talent. So and you would expect them to score a few more points in this game as well too. So this whole defensive unit has to really look at themselves in the mirror, and obviously a lot of criticism and not holding the late game lead in this thing is going to be hovering over their head. It's a good opportunity these next 2 weeks for this whole team to answer the bell against 2 divisional teams in the Bengals and the Browns.
Agreed. I know no one saw him last year. Burrow did not play in the 2 games against Pittsburgh, but TJ Watt has had how many bat downs and picks on Joe Burrow the year before, 2022? Just dominating him that week 1 game. And then I think even the rematch. And so Burrow's probably going, oh God, I got to face TJ Watt. And so I hope TJ Watt can have that impact he's had in games past. Is he still Defensive Player of the Year, the front runner, or was he surpassed by Garrett, or is there somebody else in the mix? Was his standing hurt by this game?
I don't think it was help. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think
especially
that's safe to say.
when the most notable guy, the guy that throughout seasons he's stacked up against, and Garrett has the type of game that he had. I don't know if you could call. I think it's neck and neck right now. Between those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I wonder on a tiebreaker, will people in this game may get lost, I'm sure, from
recency bias plays strong.
Yeah, well, by week 18, how much will voters
Right.
remember the week 12 Thursday night game between Pittsburgh and Cleveland? But you wonder if it comes down to it, and it may come down to Garrett and Watt. I'm not sure who else would really be in that mix right now with Aiden Hutchinson out for this season. There's other names, obviously, but those are among your top two. Will voters reflect on that game between Garrett and Watt? And who knows what happens in the rematch? Maybe Watt has 3 sacks and Garrett has the goose egg, and the whole thing swings back in Watt's favor. Who the heck knows? And we're not too focused on awards here in the middle of a season. I'm sure Watt is not, but yeah, I think his standing was certainly impacted and hurt negatively.
Look, I mean, you got another guy that you're going to face this weekend, Trey Hendrickson, too, is going to try to have a
Yeah,
say in this as well, too.
league leader in sacks, right?
Right, 11 and a half sacks right now. One and a half more than Garrett. Obviously, Watt and Garrett were neck and neck going into this game the last week, and Garrett, took a bigger lead there. But I guess if you're looking overall, it's going to be a pass rusher, right? That ends up winning this thing, you would think.
Usually is. I don't know. I mean, you got Xavier McKinney's had a bunch of picks for the Packers, which is such a, people talk about the Giants letting Barkley go. I think letting McKinney go was just as impactful. Kirby Joseph with 7. But yeah, I mean, if Fred Warner, I don't know if he'd be up for it this year. You're probably right on a pass rusher, but if it's not Water Garrett, I don't think Hendrickson's going to win it. I just don't think people know about him enough. He's a super underrated guy, both him and Sam Hubbard, but I think it's probably Water Garrett at this point.
Yeah, Watt. Yeah, look, Watt needs a bounce back game, and if anybody can do that, I mean, he could just as easily have a 3 sack game against the Bengals, and if he does, then you'd have to really, really like the Steelers' chances of winning that game. So no, it's not settled, but I think Garrett took a slight lead just because of coming off the game that he did and the game that T.J. Watt had.
And I know obviously Watt cares about wins and a playoff win to get his first more than a trophy, but he cares about the awards. I mean, that's why he was so upset and understandably and rightfully so last year, skipping the ceremony, his subtweet about it that the Browns had fun with on social media. That stuff matters for him, for legacy. I mean, to be a 2-time defensive player of the year, how many guys have done that? Only a couple, including JJ Watt. So I know he tries to downplay it, especially in season, because the focus is on winning, but those things mean a lot to him and they mean a lot to his legacy.
Right, right. Okay, rolling back to the Browns
Mhm.
aspect of this real quick on the defensive side of football, did this just come down to weighty downs?
Yeah, I think so overall. I think Pittsburgh just couldn't get the stops in the big time moments. I mean, I think they played good run defense overall. They got stops early. As you said, they had Cleveland go 3-and-out their first 2 drives, despite the Browns having excellent field position. And they were able to get 2 punts there, which was huge. And they kept the score down throughout the game overall. They got an interception on Jameis Winston in a big time moment. Winston was kind of playing more Jameis Winston free for all ball out there. But yeah, you're 4 for 4 on fourth down. Cleveland was. They made the plays late. That big 3rd-and-7 conversion was huge. Which I'm trying to think about what happened on that play. Porter tried to pass off to Minka. I don't know if Minka was expecting him to pass that off, but Minka still should have had outside leverage. I think Minka's a really good player. I've downplayed a lot of the concern that some have showed about the lack of interceptions, but he's not even made some of those impactful plays in coverage one-on-one. Gave up some catches on 3rd down to Mark Andrews against Baltimore. Gave up 1 3rd down catch to Njoku because they've been pitting Fitzpatrick on tight ends the last 2 weeks. Njoku and Mark Andrews, that 3rd down reception to Judy there, and didn't even try to touch. It didn't look like Judy, who didn't appear to actually be down on that play. So I'm not trying to be Mr. Concern about Minka Fitzpatrick, but even in some of the coverage stuff, he's been a little less than I would have hoped for.
Right, right. When you look back to in the first half or really the first 3 quarters of this game overall, they had what, three or four 3-and-outs in the first 3 quarters against that Browns offense. Now that 12-play drive that ended in the touchdown, that's when Judy came alive. I think 3 of the Browns longest plays of the game came during that drive. I think Judy had a couple of, and then obviously they marched it down. Did they have a 4th-down conversion? I think in during that drive, I believe they did. They got a touchdown there. Then obviously the other points that they had scored. It was a 6-play drive that the Steelers were able to get off the field for, and then allowed only a field goal in those situations. So through 3 quarters, I mean, you have them down to 10 points only, but then the rest of the game, they had a 10-play drive in the fourth quarter that resulted in obviously a touchdown, and then the end of game. I mean, you got after giving up that touchdown early in the fourth quarter, there they got a fumble from the strip sack from Herbig, and then got an interception. And you're thinking, okay, they're turning things around, but then obviously the 9-play touchdown drive to close things out, even though all they needed was a field goal at that point of the game to retake the lead, the Steelers just could not get the key stops when they needed to.
Going back to Watt here, that's kind of still the main takeaway from the game. Do you think they should move him around more? Should they do anything different schematically to try to get him to return to form and have a bounce back game? Or is it just keep planning your plan and playing your game, and Watt is still TJ Watt, still super talented, and he'll bounce back himself?
Well, I think even a couple of times in this game, they tried to twist him inside, but he was stymied in that. So, I mean, look, this guy puts together a good pass rush plan. He studies his opponent. He's most used to rushing off that left side. Would it hurt him once, twice, 3 times a game to switch over to the side? Probably not. But is it something that you're going to live off of? Probably not. So I think the thing is, you just keep them, stand pat, at the left side, and let just TJ Watt do what TJ Watt normally does. I mean, I think games like he had against the Browns are going to be few and far between. He's still going to make impactful plays off the left side. You might twist him inside, maybe once or twice more than what he's been doing as of late, just to maybe try to free him up and all. But look, here's the thing: when he's getting the attention that he's getting, you're expecting wins from up and down that offensive line. When Benton's got to be more impactful, Ogunjobi, whoever's on the other edge and all like that. So long story short, I think you just, for the most part, let him play on the left side.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I'm not super open to moving him. Maybe occasionally, which they really have done this year for a handful of snaps. Nothing more than that. He's not as comfortable on the other side. He doesn't disappear when he goes to the other side, and teams can shift over and still do the same on the left side. There are the offense's left side, I should say. Maybe you do blitz a little bit more from that side to try to create some one-on-ones, to not allow maybe the running backs to be able to chip, although it's typically the tight ends that are doing that. So I'm not even sure if blitzing is the necessary cure-all to create some of those one-on-ones. But yeah, I think generally you keep your general same plan.
Well, look, I mean, this defense is at its best when rush and coverage goes hand in hand. And specifically, as I said, ahead of this game, I'm curious to see how if they're able to get away with a 4-man pass rush. And they obviously did not do a good enough job within that aspect of it. So when this defense is humming, you go back to some of those Dick LeBeau days as well, too, when he started having to dial up more things to get pressure instead of using 4-man situations. That's when that defense really showed its holes, right? And I view that the same as this. This defense is going to be humming at its best when they're able to rush 4 guys and rush and coverage go hand in hand.
I get that, but LeBeau, the tendency of the fire zone is a 5-man pressure. So do you send 5 a little more often? Maybe not necessarily fire zones, but that is what the fire zone is. You rush 5, you play cover 3 behind.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get up against some of these quarterbacks, more experienced quarterbacks,
Sure.
As we've seen with the Joe Flaccos and all, they'll pick the zone apart.
Right. And some talented receivers. You got to cover Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this weekend. And so how do you balance blitzing versus coverage? You're going to be paying attention to coverage. You're going to be bracketing on Jamar Chase. If you're blitzing and trying to bracket, then you're really leaving some islands out there elsewhere. If you miss one tackle, it's a big play the other way. So a lot to juggle, a lot to balance, and I really want to see. I mean, the good news is these 2 teams play in 2 weeks. That was one of the many quirks of the schedule this year. You go Cleveland week 12, then Cleveland week 14. You'll be at home. what is the plan? Is it different? I imagine the Browns and Steelers, barring some major injuries in week 13, will essentially be the same exact rosters. It really won't be like when we do our scouting reports and be like, see week 12, like there's hardly anything new, I'm sure, to discuss. So that'll be a really kind of interesting litmus test to see that chess match and what Pittsburgh, what adjustments they make and what they keep the same.
Well, when you look at the schedule, the way the schedule, after the fact, the schedule set and what happened in Cleveland the other night, the best thing that you can hope for is a quicker turnaround against Cleveland, because these guys want to get that bad taste out of their mouth as quick as possible. So the fact that you play Cleveland after you play Cincinnati, to me, feels like a good thing, because you're going to still have that taste in your mouth from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think for Pittsburgh, after that loss, they want to get back on the horse and get the revenge and split the season with the Browns. All right, Dave, anything else defensively? Anything else stick out to you, good or bad, in this one?
No, there were a couple balls up in the air, that got deflected that you wish they could have got their hands on, or those kind of things there. I thought the tackling, for the most part, was okay. Just once again, the fourth down aspect of it, and Jameis Winston making plays out of structure ended up being a key, especially in-game situation here for this team that played a part in the loss.
Can we call him Clamps Hayward? Hayward has 7 pass deflections this year, which is tied for the team lead. He's got 4 in the last 2 weeks.
He's continuing to play well, without a doubt.
Yeah. I not. This is where PFF, we can always agree to disagree. It's just one tool in our tool belt. They really dinged him for his run defense. I think his run defense is really good in this game. I still want to see him be able to shed and get a little more pressure, but the power was still there. I thought his run defense was really good overall. He got dinged for that by PFF. I'm not quite sure what they saw there.
All
right, Dave, let's go to the offense. And I had a big article up this morning on Arthur Smith and my kind of review and breakdown of him. It's hard to articulate everything, so go read the post where I hopefully do a better job of laying out and explaining what happened. But overall, I would say the run game, I was really disappointed in the scheme and the lack of variety there. The pass game, I thought, was more forgivable, more successful, and Pittsburgh had the challenge of what opposing offenses usually have against Pittsburgh's defense of you have to chip and contain the pass rush, and that really limits your pass game concepts and your creativity and your ability to really scheme guys open, because you typically only have 3 true players in the pattern, while your tight ends and running backs are chipping and releasing out into the flats and not really part of the immediate progression or check down type of options. And even still, Pittsburgh had success in those moments. So the pass game, while there certainly are some things to nitpick and some things I did not like, I felt better about. The run game, though, Dave, I thought was really poorly planned and schemed.
Yeah, you wonder how much of a short week and how much because there was that conversation of how much do you change in a short week, how much do you add, and all like that. Didn't look like they added much of anything other than some formational maybe kind of changes, but it was the same old as far as the running game went. I think that they just thought they were going to show up and maybe be the stronger team and wear them down, especially once the snow started and all like that. A bit curious. Look, here's the thing that I can't get away from. You knew that you're going to have Myles Garrett over on one side that you're going to have to contain with all game, and that you're going to have to give guys like Dan Moore help in this thing. And I talked about this just coming off of the TV tape as well, too. I thought the effort and the execution on instances when they were trying to chip Garrett were just, and look, he's a great player. I mean, he's used to that as well, too, and made sure to tell people as much after the game that he's used to all the attention that he gets. I don't think that the help that they gave a lot of times was even close to being good. And then, his effort and fighting through it, was fantastic on top of it. So, and obviously his 3 sacks were huge in this game. And when the running game isn't clicking, especially on their early down type situations for this team, do we have it sorted of what this team, and this team ran so much on first and 10 situations and second and long situations there. It's almost like, and they weren't very good at it overall either. So, when you're not willing to throw on first and 10 situations to kind of mix it up, I think you get what you get. And then, I do understand. I'm okay with Justin Fields coming into the game. You know, probably one too many times in this game, as we said the other day. And then the first fourth down, just that looked like it might have been a two-way on that, right?
No,
Uh,
I don't think it was. I think it was designed to go to the right the entire time.
I don't know that kind of step that he took, but
Well, I think he's faking. It's like a counter.
yeah,
I mean, if in hindsight he should have gone left because
right.
if he does that, that's a first down, maybe a touchdown. But I think the goal was to try to fake like he's going to go left because they've been running that play the last 2 weeks on fourth downs and then go back to the right. But that is too drawn out for a 4.5 yards.
Well, their running game, except for, I mean, they did have a couple of plays in this thing where they had a couple of things bust, and as you pointed out, kind of maybe one of the hidden plays on one of the Najee ones that if he's not tripped up, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's all it is. It did look kind of vanilla overall. They weren't executing. The offensive line uh was getting slipped a little bit too easy in certain situations, and when you did get into max protection type situations, you limit the amount of guys that you go out and routes. The fact that Russell Wilson was able to connect a couple of times down the field to Calvin, I thought at least that was good. Obviously, the one to pick. Russell missed a couple of of open guys in this thing as well too. When he rolled out to the left side on one of those, he missed a wide open Pat
Mm-hmm.
Freiermuth. I'm not saying that Pat Freiermuth scores on that one, but I
He
guarantee
might have scored on that one.
yeah. I don't know how heavy the piano would have got on his back because that would have been a long way to run. But I guarantee you that would have been a very, very. I mean, that would have at least been a 40, 60 whatever yard play. And like you said,
Yeah.
maybe he does score in that situation there. But I don't know how he just did not see him in that situation. Ended up throwing up underneath in that situation there. And then I think one other time he might have could have gotten the ball to Calvin Austin out in space there. Overall, though, I thought Wilson played a good game for situational, passing game type of stuff there. It just, obviously it wasn't enough, especially down in the red zone.
I think on that one, the Freiermuth, and obviously you go back on the tape and I'm sure Wilson's kicking himself for not seeing it. Freiermuth had the mailbox flag up saying, please, God, throw me the football. And the sideline was doing the same and he didn't see it. But it's a boot to the left. They run that play a million times in different ways, different formations. But it's a low high read. Look at the flat. And the second read's that crosser that comes across. And that third read is going to be that corner route that Freiermuth runs. They rarely end up throwing that corner route. And so I think Wilson looked in the flat immediately, didn't see it, went to the crosser, didn't like it, then came back to the flat underneath, never really got to that third progression because it's not one you typically get to. One he probably should have in that moment because nothing else was really obviously open. If the tight end was open in the flat, then okay, that's your first read. Throw the ball, that makes sense. Probably should have checked it, but I think he was already coming off those downfield options when Freiermuth was breaking open, when the defense was biting and leaving Freiermuth all alone. So yeah, missed opportunity, but I think that's kind of what was in Wilson's head on that play.
I didn't think, and I said this the other day, Connor Hayward, definitely not his best game, especially when coming split zone and in situation where he's having to block there. I think you laid it out well. Too much failure, too much repetition. What else do you have in here? The backside they got hit on, not blocking it up. I think one of these is even Connor Hayward on the ground, missing, and waiting moments they just weren't getting it done.
To answer, I think you were asking a question and then you swallowed it. On first down against the Browns in the first 3 quarters, so excluding some of the fourth quarter catch-up stuff, Pittsburgh had 17 plays. They ran 13 times, only threw 4. And so it was very run heavy on first down and not super successful at that. Najee had 9 carries for 26 yards. Warren had more success, 4 carries for 20 yards. So a run heavy approach. I do think the Browns, and again, another thing I want to see in the rematch in 2 weeks is the adjustments. It's hard to run play action when you have Myles Garrett on the field. It's hard to run your boot game when Myles Garrett is on the field. And so some of the strengths and the core elements of the Arthur Smith offense, harder to do when Garrett's out there. When they were running play action, when they were running their boot game, it was typically coming when Garrett was off the field. And so you really can't be as free to call play action as you probably otherwise would like to because of the threat of Myles Garrett. And overall, the Browns pass rush has been successful this season. So I think that's one thing that muted Pittsburgh's strengths in this game. But you can't just throw up your hands and say, well, I guess we can't run play action. Can you solve it? Can you do some different things? Hopefully in the rematch with a full week to prepare, you can have some better answers there. But yeah, run game, too much gap scheme. The gap scheme was not working overall. They did not really run a lot of duo, and just because I thought Pittsburgh would have had success in kind of a power, not power, not a gap scheme, but power in terms of let's run straight ahead. Their linebacking core is not that impressive. They lost JOK. The interior line's not that great. They don't have these big giant pluggers in the middle. You got to get the ball downhill. Not enough ISO, not enough power in this game. And I thought Pittsburgh should have leaned on that more than some of these gap schemes. And when they did try some of these gap schemes, like I wrote in the post, they don't account for the backside linebacker. They're trying to have the tackle cut off the backside linebacker who's completely out leveraged if tackle is, has no chance to make the block. And you got that linebacker Diabate that's looking like Fred Warner out there making all these plays from the backside. And you never really had a good way to account for him. And you tried to run short traps 4 times in this game. It had success the first play. Then it was bust the rest of the time. They tried to run that pony grouping with Warren and Patterson, this orbit motion. Those plays were unsuccessful. And even the fourth down failures, the first one to Fields, go back to that 3rd and 1, Dave, on the opening possession when Darnell Washington false started. That they were running the same play. And it was like the Ravens game with a 2-point conversion where the play started and the ball was snapped and McCormick pulled and the whistle blew. It was kind of a preview to Cleveland of what the play was. In the next possession, Pittsburgh comes back to it on that 4th and 2 and they run it again. And so did Cleveland have an idea of what was coming because it kind of got a preview of it on that last possession? I think they did. I think that impacted things.
Yeah, you're probably right there. I think one of the amazing things is we talk about the Browns being 4 for 4 on 4th down. The Steelers were 1 and 3 overall. Thankfully, I don't think either one of those turnovers on downs cost them any points, did it?
And I'd have to check, but it didn't put points on the board themselves.
Right, right.
And that's a difference in this one. I don't know what the ensuing Browns possession was on those two.
They ended up punting on both of them, it looks like.
I mean, that's good, but obviously you're not giving yourself the chance to score. And if you can put the ball in the end zone in one of those possessions, you may end up winning that game. The other 4th down, that failure on that split zone, they had run that earlier in the game from a similar line of scrimmage around midfield. And so did Cleveland have a better feeling for that one the second time around? Potentially. I think that was still more execution, but still, did Cleveland have a good idea of maybe what was coming? It was the same formation. I knew there were only so many run plays in the world you can run, but they're dressed up the same way. Formationally, they're the exact same. Can you dress something up to make it look a little different from an alignment standpoint to make sure the defense has a different picture so they can't key in on things? I don't think Pittsburgh did that well, and that, along with too much gap schemes, were my 2 biggest complaints in the run game.
You got a mini bye week here. You better break some tendencies again.
Yeah. And I know the short week condenses things, but the Browns didn't seem to have an issue on the short week in terms of being able to convert in short yardage and 4th down type stuff. And Pittsburgh did. Even their one conversion for Pittsburgh was ad-libbed. It was not. I'm not even sure what the intent of the play was. Like on 4th and 1, you really no quick hitter there. The 2-point conversion, terrible idea. And my overall other impression from this game is Russell Wilson got the crap kicked out of him. He took some hard hits. The Hail Mary, even the touchdown to Calvin. I mean, kudos to standing tall in the pocket, but like that dude's hurting. He's about to turn 36 here in a couple of days, so got to protect him better in that rematch.
He took probably about 4 good hits in this game, didn't he?
Yeah, his ribs, I'm sure, were hurting this week, and he probably laid on the couch all weekend. But yeah, he got even that 4th down completion. Garrett just crushed him. So yeah, big time hits. You don't want your quarterback to take.
As bad as it looked at times on offense, though, and look, there was a point in this game where I thought it was over for sure. But the fact that they came back and fought back and actually had the lead in this, I thought if there's a positive to pull out of that, because we had asked the question a couple of times early on in the year, how will this offense respond when they get down by a couple of scores, and at least we did see them respond in that aspect and get back-to-back touchdowns Let's see, one coming off of a kick. They answered the score of what looked like was going to be the dagger of this thing early in the fourth quarter by driving down and getting a touchdown. Then you're thinking to yourself, man, maybe they're not out of it. Then they get the interception. The strip sack fumble, and they're able to answer that up. Obviously, you can't help but go back to this offense getting the ball back at 4:22 in the fourth quarter, and essentially well, it was no essentially too. It was a chance to put this ball game away at that point. Then they go three and out in that situation. Then you have the bad punt, and you just set you look at the win probability chart from that game. It went all over the place there in a matter of what three or 4 minutes of the game there. But this was a game they had a chance to win, but both sides of the football let them down in those final two possessions.
Sure. Credit to Pittsburgh for resiliency, for coming back. I think Russell Wilson's leadership plays a role in that. The overall resolve of this team, their never quit, never say die attitude is really important and will suit them well and serve them well, I should say, throughout the rest of the season. But almost makes the loss more painful because you're like, okay, you came back, you fought so hard to get the lead, get the interception. There's 4 minutes left. You get 1 or 2 first downs. This game is over or essentially over, and you can't do that. And that makes it sting even more to feel like, okay, you're so close. You got all the way back in it. We're thinking, oh my God, they're going to complete this comeback. I was writing a post on the improbability of the comeback. What was it like? Teams were 0-88 when they were down by 12 in the fourth quarter to come back and win, and Pittsburgh would have broken that. And that one will stay in drafts. That will not be an article that will be published. So that makes it hurt, I think, all the more.
Even with the 4 sacks in this game, Russell Wilson came out with an 8.38 adjusted net yards per passing attempt number. Now, 3 big plays down the field, with one of those obviously being a touchdown pass to Calvin Austin, help shape that. But, we're still dealing with a small sample size overall. But, he's got a 7.09 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number. And if you would have told me at this point of the season, regardless of the amount of games that Russell has played, obviously think he's going to play more than 2 or 3 at this point of the season, which obviously he has at this point. If you would have told me he's got an over 7 number at this point, I would have jumped and taken it, especially thinking how this defense was would play. So I think there's stuff to build on, but obviously you got some key 6 games, and we're gonna have to see him against some of these teams like the Bengals and the Eagles and the Chiefs, and then the Bengals again. It's probably going to take an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of greater than 7 for the Steelers to win a majority of those games.
Right, as you said, given the schedule, given the likely need for points in those games. Against starting with the Bengals this weekend. I think you're right about that. So yeah, big time test there. His next touchdown pass will give him the most by a Steelers quarterback in a single season since Ben retired at 8, which is kind of a sad stat to share. But the current leader is Wilson, tied with Kenny Pickett with 7 touchdown passes in a single season since Ben retired, heading into the 2022 season. So Wilson is doing some things the Pittsburgh quarterbacks have not really done since number 7 hung up his cleats.
Let's see. He's been sacked 16 times over 5 games? Is that right? Mm-hmm. So that's 3 per game. If you extrapolate that out over a 17-game season, what is that?
Oh, let's do some math here. Public math. 3.2
51?
times 17. 54, I'm getting. 16 divided by 5 times 17. 54, which is crazy high, but that's what has happened to him throughout large chunks of his career. And he's been among the most sacked quarterbacks. So, yeah, how much is that on him? We have our sack breakdown that we do each week, so there's always blame to go around. Again, I'll just point back to 12 of those 16 sacks have come in the first half, including all 4 against the Browns. Now, one of them was when Wilson ran out of bounds, and he should have just thrown the football away. That's a different kind of sack, but a sack, of course, all the same.
All right. Anything else on offense?
They got to stop running crunch. They're trying to run that double wham scheme. They had it on the first play of the game, and I love the scheme, but it just has not worked. They tried it twice in this game. It failed both times. There's always something that goes wrong. They're trying to have Connor Hayward cut a D tackle. Not a great idea. So I don't know. Maybe scrap that one.
All right.
That's all I got. Anything else here, Dave?
No.
Any other news coming in? Looks like Daniel Jones is he may pick a team today. Could go to the Ravens. Apparently, the Ravens are one of the teams that is viewed as a potential landing spot for Daniel Jones.
Trying to think if there's anything else left over. I mean, obviously, special teams. The Bulls down to that final Waitman punt. Boz missed obviously a field goal in this, but I mean, as good as he's been.
Did you like the decision to kick a field goal there? We didn't talk about that much on the Friday show. It's a 58-yard attempt. It was windy, but it wasn't snowy yet. Do you kick? Do you punt? What do you do there?
What was the down and distance on that one?
It was 4th and forever because Wilson had taken a sack, which was a bad sack. But you go back and look at that scheme. I think it was a bad play call by Arthur Smith. They're in 13 personnel with Skoranek against the lone receiver, trying to give a run-heavy look. They pass out of it. They run a mesh sit. No one's open. I can't expect Ben Skoranek, Michael Pruitt to get open on 3rd down. So the call was bad. It was 4th and long. I don't know the exact down and distance.
Yeah,
but
4th and 11. 4th and 11
third.
from the 40. And I mean, it's results.
I mean, there's a process. 58-yarder in the conditions. I mean, you trust your kicker, and Boss has been fantastic. There were worse decisions Tomlin made that day, but that one, it's debatable. I guess I get it, especially early in the game. Let's kind of see what the conditions are like. Can Boss make this from 58? If you can make it, and you feel really good about the rest of the game. But I get the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't given it much thought, the decision there. I was okay in the moment,
Yeah, but obviously taking a sack from 3rd and 3 to 3rd and 11 is a really impactful play.
All right.
Dave, I think that's all we got. We can get to some reader emails and close out today's show. No live stream tonight. That's just part of our regular schedule, but I'd like to announce that on each Monday, let you guys know what's happening. What does the emo machine have for us, Dave?
Let's see. Get some people we ain't heard from here in a while. Hasm writes in, David Knox, here are some of my thoughts on what the Steelers need to do against the Bengals. Attack Mike Hilton early and often with big play guys like Darnell Washington, George Pickens, or Mike Williams. Oh, we do have something else to kind of talk about before we get into this. What do you think about all the George Pickens fallout?
I mean, I think it's a little bit more noise than actual problems. I mean, none of it's good. And to give some clarity on the fallout, there was a Instagram story video that was shared by Brown safety Grant Delpit of a clip later in the game of Pickens putting his leg out and attempting to trip Delpit as he was jawing. Delpit was with, I think, Cordell Patterson on a play. And so that's bad, obviously. And NFL's reportedly
that's
looking
childish.
into things.
There's no reason for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty dirty too, to be honest with you. If that was a Bengals player or a Browns player that did that to a Steeler, we'd be calling that pretty dirty. So certainly don't support that. Likely a fine, probably some fines coming up from this Browns game for sure, for all the things that happened in that moment at the end of the game, etc. I will say at the end of the game, I mean, I really don't.
I understand why he was pissed.
Yeah, because he was literally getting shoved while the ball's in the air through the end zone. And then I think, it was Newsome that really like put Pickens into the wall there. I think that's when Newsome lost his helmet. And so I don't think Pickens did anything wrong there. I think, as you said, he was pissed and right to be heated. They really should call PI on that. They never call pass interference on a Hail Mary, so I'm not expecting that to be the case. The post-game comments, obviously, not great to say, but to me, it's not really that big of a deal overall. Again, I advocate for George Pickens to never speak to the media, just eat the fine. The trip, though, is as you said, childish and immature and, just disappointing to see. But does that matter 3 weeks from now? Probably not.
Yeah, just, after a tough loss, like it seems like obviously when we're talking about Pickens, it's after losses, right?
Always after a loss, 100%. I've said that for a while now.
We're going to have to, there's going to be a couple of fines come out of this. I'd get the internet ink ready on Saturday because there's probably going to be a few fines to come out of this. Oh, we forgot to mention that Minka was fined for a late, that scuffle after that interception on the sideline against the Ravens there. If it's just for the end of action stuff after the play there, look, he's everybody appeals these fines nowadays, right? And I would expect no difference from no different from Minka there. I think a fine's a little much in that situation, especially when the other player, who was it?
McCarry.
Yeah, McCarry did not get fined in that situation. I hope Minka does appeal that one, and I hope that one gets rescinded. He was trying to get guys off of his guys and that kind of thing there. That felt a little bit over the top there, but it is news, and we forgot to report that. I mean, we had it written up on the site and all, but I thought that was a little bit too much to find Minka in that situation there. And also, I think the Kyle Hamilton fine for taunting and whatnot might be a little bit over the top in that situation, but we'll save that for another day there. But I think you will see a couple of fines come out of this game against the Browns and the Steelers, for Pickens and DBs and all. And yeah, I understand why he was pissed at the end of the game because he was roughhoused right out of the back of the end zone on that Hail Mary there, and those two got together. But the trip and stuff, man, Lee, we don't need that stuff. And like you said, sometimes it's better for Pickens not to talk after games, to say things that like he said after that game.
Right. My only reaction from the Ravens, the fine game, or the fines from the Ravens game, is I was surprised there was not more. I thought there would have been a lot more for all the scrapping that Frazier did and Broderick Jones and Marlon Humphrey did, but those ones, some penalties, but no fines there. So maybe they'll appeal. We usually don't hear about results of appeals. I know the one from the Jets game was at Quinton Williams. There's two of those Q Williams. One of those guys got their fine, which was a hefty fine, rescinded. What was the fine earlier? The one on Darnell Washington. We never heard the resolution on that cut block. We never found out if that was rescinded or not. Hopefully it was, but don't know the resolution on that one.
All right, back to the Haslam email. Attack Mike Hilton early and often with big guys like Darnell Washington, George Pickens, or Mike Williams. Number 2, play Corey Trice a lot on T. Higgins. He says he thinks Trice's size will be very important against Higgins. He says, I think the Steelers linked with Porter and Trice could disrupt their timing and frustrate receivers. Even if our corners take penalties, it'd be worth it just to create the disruption. Number 3, run downhill between the tackles. He says, I don't want negative plays against the Bengals. Getting 2 yards is fine as long as we stay ahead of the chains. Number 4, Watt needs to play better. I don't think moving him to the right on occasion is useful. Rather, I'd consider some twists and stunts with Larry O. Also, I'd consider lining him up on the inside and running fire zones. Also, consider him dropping out in the flat every once in a while. He needs to be a big major contributor on Sunday. They lost a corner, did they not? They're going to have to play on the outside. Who are they going to have to play on the outside?
I'll have to look. I'm not. They lost the corner?
Didn't one of them have to go to IR recently? They're going to have to play Cam Taylor, Brett, and Josh Newton, I think, on the outside.
Okay.
They've
had that for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Somebody went down a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a Wouzier, was it?
No. I forget who.
I'm trying to look, but I don't know how well I'll be able to. Oh, was that DJ Turner?
The one with the shoulder.
Yeah, broken clavicle a week ago. Yeah, good call on that.
What do you think about? What do you think about some of his 4 statements there? You think Corey Trice is going to be ready? We expect him to be ready, be activated. Do you think he's going to? It's still going to be Jackson and Porter mostly.
Yeah. I mean, for Trice to come off, hasn't played in 2 months essentially, and then have to go out there and cover T. Higgins, you're asking a lot. I'm not even sure what role Trice will have in this game. Want to see that in dime packages. I still expect Sutton to be out there. Would they replace Bishop? Would they not have a role for Trice at all? I get the size mismatch, and you got Jackson on a big guy like Higgins, I assume. I think we'll see Porter on Chase quite a bit in this game. That's going to be an issue. Jackson's play has regressed, but I don't know if that's going to be the answer of putting Trice out there on him.
I think you do need to try to go after Mike Hilton when he's on the field in the situations there. I think he's had some issues in coverages this year. I haven't gotten deep into the tape yet, though. But all right, has them noted on your 4 things there. Ryan Nogler writes in, do you feel Connor Hayward is being put in the best positions to succeed? He has a hard piece to fit in based on his size and skill set from college to begin with, but now I really wonder if he even fits with the new Arthur Smith offense. As you guys mentioned, Friday was an ugly game for him with only a good block coming against Denzel Ward and another Browns defensive back. He's just becoming harder to watch in this offense, in his opinion. Finally, I'm still waiting on Minka's splash plays this year. Him along with Joey Porter seem to be just behind Jerry Jeudy on the big conversion play last game. Is there anything you guys think they could do with Minka, hoping he gets back to making big plays we're used to seeing? Look, other than, robber situations or teams throwing at him more in the middle of the field, it's kind of tough to kind of manufacture those big plays for Minka. And when you think ahead to kind of this game against the Bengals and what they're going to have at wide receiver, how many opportunities are you going to have for him to come down and cut things?
I mean, he'll get his chances. You never know. The last 2 weeks, he's kind of been a little bit more on tight end duty of covering Mark Andrews and Njoku in some of those third down situations. I imagine it'll be less of the case against the Bengals because they don't have a real true tight end threat like those other AFC North teams do. Yeah, well, yeah, it's true. Gesicki, I guess, has made some plays. I don't know if he's at the Njoku Andrews level of attention, but yeah, again, that's a good point. Gesicki has stepped up, especially in some of the absences that T. Higgins has had. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to really do differently there. I think you just keep playing your game with Minka. Was there another part of that question?
That Connor Hayward stuff.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think he has. I don't think Pittsburgh really knows exactly what to do with him. He's not the line blocker. He's not really getting involved in the pass game. Only has 4 receptions this year. They try, like I said, they try to cut a D tackle. They try to split zone. Yeah, it's an awkward fit. I'm with you there.
Connor's, good on special teams, but he hasn't been as impactful on special teams as we've seen him, in past years. And he is undersized. He's not a guy that you're going to line up on the end of line of scrimmage. And if you're going to play him in kind of the H-back role, it's kind of telling that he's probably going to be coming across and trying to cut somebody. He's just not very, it's kind of hit and miss when he does that as well too. So yeah, I was thinking about this the other night. I'm not thinking way too ahead of to the draft and all, but you got an older guy in Michael Pruitt that you kind of wonder how much time he's battling through a knee issue of some sort this year. On top of it, you obviously have your top two tight ends in Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. You might see this team 4th, 5th round have to address bigger bodied, blocking tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you probably will need a third tight end. I mean, you have your top 2 in Freiermuth and Washington. You could go add a veteran in free agency. That might be a cheaper and less costly way to go about it than burning a draft pick. But yeah, there'll be some small things to look at. I think safety as well. I assume Casey won't be back after this year. You'll have Minka. You'll have Elliott. Will be in the last year of his contract on that 2-year deal. And what else do you really have behind those 2 guys? Killebrew as a special teams guy, but that's really it, right? You think about what's going to happen Larry Ogunjobi after this year. Right. About that this weekend. Free agent. I'd be very surprised if he was brought back. Who's your starting left defensive end next year?
Right.
I think you talked about drafting that high.
14 snaps for Connor Hayward in that game. I wonder what the EPA was in snaps that he was in the game for.
I mean, you did have the 30-yard zone read, which was a really nice block by Hayward, that arc block, and he caught 2 on that play. So there was some positivity. The split, that 4th and 1 split zone wasn't a great block by Hayward, but I put that one more on Say Malu for missing his block or losing his block more so than Hayward. That cut block on the D tackle, I don't know. I think you're asking too much for Connor Hayward to try to cut a 3 tech on that crunch play. Just tough spot to be in overall. Yeah, I imagine the EPA was probably, I would guess, 0.
What do you think about Mike Williams' uptick in snaps starting this next week? Was it you that wrote that you're not too worried about his amount of snaps just yet? And when will you become worried?
Well, obviously, you don't want to goose egg 3 games in a row. My whole premise, I think, was partially about some of the patience with Williams' short week. If you're seeing more too high, it takes away, it nerfs some of the skill set that Williams brings vertically. But as long as All I care about, Dave, is that another receiver not named George Pickens makes plays. I don't care who it is. It can be Van Jefferson. It can be Calvin Austin. It can be Mike Williams. It can be Scotty Miller. It can be Rowan Wilson, if and when he ever comes off of injured reserve. As long as somebody else is making one or two plays in a game, that's all this offense needs. In this Browns game, it was Jefferson with a 35-yard reception. It was Austin with his best game of his career, 46-yard completion. That would have been a touchdown if that ball was out there in front of him. Pressure didn't really allow that to happen. The 23-yarder, which was playing big, making a tough catch, going up there and getting the football. So as long as somebody else makes plays, I don't really care who it is. And in that game, at least other guys stepped up.
All right, John Peterson from Southern Utah. Don't recognize this name.
Must be from the Killebrew land.
Dave and Alex, maybe this is a sign of my brain being demented, but I realized that my favorite part of the Steelers' loss is the anticipation of the following podcast of getting to hear Dave sing gloom, despair, and agony on me. I think the human brain loves rituals. Lord, I am obsessive compulsive, man. So when I get on something, I run it into the ground. But John seems to like, let's just hope I don't have to use that. He calls it cathartic, though, after losses. Maybe misery loves company, but when Dave skips the song after a loss, it's like I can't fully mourn the loss. Also, I've heard Dave say many times that he doesn't believe in trap games, yet we spent a full week talking about the Browns game as a trap game. I think a better name for them is a letdown game, he says. I don't know who came up with trap game, but I think we see the Steelers drop a game every year where they come off a big win against a great opponent and follow it up by a play down to weaker team and lose. So the question is, if you don't believe in a trap game, do you believe in a letdown game? I just look, you roll around the NFL, and we did earlier in the show about some of these teams that lost to teams every week, man. You see, I mean, this is the NFL, man. This is professional stuff. This is why the guys get paid the money that they paid, because they're athletes out there. And I had a stat pulled aside. Damn it, if I didn't on StatHead. I was looking at, well, maybe I can get it back real quick here. Team.
What's the stat?
About the Steelers, and when favored by 3.5 or more points on the road, I think. Let me see if this is it. God dang it. What did I do different here? I lost it there, but I think something, I sorted it out by Steelers losses under Mike Tomlin on the road when favored by 3.5 or more points, according to StatHead. I want to say it's like 17 or 18, something like that, losses that they've had. So, I think in my mind it comes out to like one a season or something like that. I think obviously in some seasons there were multiple or something like that. They were, look, for as bad as a lot of factors. This is not an excuse by any stretch of the imagination, but I will leave it with Alex and I both had this as a 3-point game, I think, in our final score predictions there. I mean, you got a division game, this is the Browns Super Bowl, this is a short week, you got the weather aspect of it and all like that. No, I don't believe in trap games in the NFL. I'll go to my grave saying that. I mean, if this league has ever had more it's a very parity kind of league right now, and I buy into the any given Sunday aspect of it, where 5 plays in an NFL game can certainly can determine the outcome of it. Do you want to call them letdown games instead of trap games? I mean, call them whatever you want, but the ones that really, really sting are the ones where you see where they're 12, 13, 14-point favorites. Not that any of them are good. I mean, look, if you play this team, if you replay this game 10 times, even in the same conditions, how many did the Steelers probably win more of them than they lose, but they're probably still going to lose a couple of those replays, all things created equal.
Yeah, I mean, we can do. I'm with you that I don't believe in. Well, I think trap games could still maybe exist in the NFL, but they're a lot less frequent than college, and they'd be more towards a younger overall team. And I think Pittsburgh has enough veteran experience and knowing how the Browns play and, familiar opponent that reduces some of the trap game stuff. But I think it's fair to say that you got to get up for these games, got to get locked in. And some of those games are easier than others, and some of them are harder than others. And the circumstances of going off that emotional, intense, big win over Baltimore, and then having to turn around and try to get emotionally right for that Browns game, short week on the road, all those reasons we talked about pregame was a factor in that one. How do you describe that and frame that? I don't know, but I think there's certainly an element to mentally being in it. And I don't know if Pittsburgh was in the best place for this game.
All right. Christopher King writes in on TJ Watt. TJ Watt is an all-time great, no disputing that. But should the Steelers attempt to run more stunts with Watt looping to the inside, harder to chip and double team, like the Browns did with Garrett, who beat Frazier? Obviously can't do it a lot and not a fix-all, but at least something that can shake him free maybe once or twice a game. How many times do you remember? I know one for sure he twisted inside. Seemed like there were 2 or 3 in total.
Yeah, there were a couple. That sounds about right, 2 or 3. But I mean, I'm asking this a little vaguely. I don't know the answer. When was the last time Watt got a sack off of a stunt? It really doesn't happen that often.
Yeah,
I feel like. So
I'd have to roll back and.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is a response. Some of those chips will create those automatic stunts. That is kind of part of their plan. But I don't think those have been super effective either. I don't remember him being as successful off of stunts. Yeah, just typically gets kind of dunked up there in that A gap.
All right, Craig Sampson, we'll make this one the final one. Great analysis and fantastic coverage. That was an ugly, ugly game. It seemed like the cornerbacks were in slow motion half the game. How do we always allow these mediocre quarterbacks to give us a problem? The play calling was atrocious. Why do we always run on 1st and 10 every single time? And of course, 7 out of 10 times Najee just runs into a wall. It's so predictable to teams, he writes. I'm just going to say it again. Despite Arthur Smith and Russ, as I said before, this game plan is unreliable and unsustainable. I view defensive turnovers as a luxury to have, meaning the goal of the defense is to stop a score. And if they get turnover, then that's icing on a cake. We cannot rely on the defense doing this every game, especially if we don't even capitalize. I would rather Russ throw 25 to 10 passes and 2 to 3 deep balls with a possibility of an interception than have Najee run into a wall every 1st and 10. He's bummed out. All right, so that's his rant there. Look, the Russian coverage did not go hand in hand, especially later in the game in the snow. That's when they gave up some bigger time plays later in this game. The play calling was atrocious, especially if you read that post that Alex has up earlier this morning. You would like to see them, I think, pass a little bit more in 1st and 10 situations. As far as the rest of the stuff there, look, the red zone thing's obviously going to be a big thing to watch in this thing moving forward into the final 6 games of the season, because even when the play calling and the execution has been good, we're seeing this team, especially early in games, move the football down the field, but they're not finishing those 8, 9, 10, 11 play drives with touchdowns. And that is a concerning aspect of this for sure. And if they don't start finding a way to finish these drives, and if they get into these late game situations where they're needing that last stop with 4 minutes left in the game to win the ball game, it's, I don't know how often you can count on it there. So this team's going, if this win or lose in these final 6 games, they're going to be close games, right? They're probably going to be.
I would expect them to.
One possession
in Pittsburgh's favor.
1 possession games. What I would like to see from this offense starting, against the Bengals in this next one is a first. When's the last time this team went down on a first possession and won a ball game? And how many times have we actually seen that happen over the course of like the last 3 or 4 seasons? One thing that aggravated me on Sunday was right out of shoot when red zone comes on, you see there were like 2 teams that just went down on the first possession, scored a touchdown.
Do you know the last time that happened? I have the answer.
Go ahead. I don't.
Bengals game last year.
Oh yeah, the
Week
quick
16, week
slant,
17.
the quick slant to Pickens, right?
Yeah, for last time Pittsburgh had an opening possession touchdown. I wonder if that's the longest streak in the league. I'll have to open that project for today. I don't know if any team has had a longer drought. Has every other team had an opening drive touchdown this year? I don't know.
And I don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you, before that, it seemed like we were talking about that being the first open and drive possession touchdown for this team in quite a span of games, right?
Yeah, there were some long stretches. I think it got better after the Canada firing. I think there were a couple games where it happened, but it has not happened this year. I wonder, let's see if we can find here quickly.
All right.
How many teams have scored an opening possession touchdown this year? Pittsburgh obviously has not. They got a bunch of field goals. They have moved the ball in early drive. We've talked about that, but finishing those drives has certainly been problematic. Let's see. Drive.
Sort that out.
Oh boy. Yeah, you get a vamp here for a second. I try to look some stuff up.
Let me see if I got anything else in the email here real quick. Here we go again from Coakley. Longtime listener, frequent reader of the site. Love everything you guys do. Watching the Steelers last night against the Browns was frustrating, especially our inability to execute in short yardage situations, 3rd and 4th downs. Weather conditions weren't ideal, but both teams had to deal with it. Maybe we read this one the other day. I don't mind Justin Fields coming in. Yeah, I think we read that one the other day there. But look, no reason got a lot of negative emails in here. Understandable. All right, you find the answer?
Yeah, Pittsburgh, not alone on opening drive touchdowns. They are one of 7 teams to not do it this year. The others are Seattle, Chicago, Dallas, Philadelphia, the Jets, and the Jaguars. So not the best company to keep overall, but there are the Eagles on this list, the Seahawks on this list. So yeah, hopefully Pittsburgh can get out of that group here soon.
All right. Against the Bengals will be a good time to do it. All right. I think we got through a good part of these on this Monday. We'll come back on Wednesday. I'm pulling 3 games of the Bengals tape today, so we ought to have a pretty good idea. And also the Steelers will practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. The first injury report will be Wednesday afternoon. Mike Tomlin will speak on Tuesday, so we'll recap that on Wednesday and start getting ready for the Bengals game. Big week here. Even though the Bengals have the record that they have, it's a very important game for both teams, really. So we'll get after that on Wednesday. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do, want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions that way. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.